I'll just record onto this computer. So I closed basically all the things I could so that my computer won't melt as I try to record and do all this at the same time. But yeah, okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. Can you all see?
All good.
Cool. Yeah, so the thing I'm working on right now is it's core level support for right now reduced motion. And what this means is reduced motion, there's two things that have to be considered. Well, I don't know if you can see my video because I'm using my hands. I'll use my iPad. So there's two things. Two brush pen, no stream. Don't forget streaming. Yep. There's two things. And that is one, that it takes the preference from your computer. So on Mac OS, I forget where it is exactly, but there's something in here where you can say, oh, please, I prefer reduced motion. And then that's like your computer settings. The other one is we need to be able to allow for applications or editors, or for example, Gutenberg, to have that setting as part of like the application settings, which is kind of independent of your computer. So like if you can imagine, if you log into like a Trello or a Google or something else, and there might be something like an option where it's like, oh yes, please, I prefer reduce motion. So that's another way to set it. That means that the system has to understand both of these configurations. So most component library setups, if they support it, they only support this one. That means that the application or whatever that's implementing it, they have to figure out how to create this relationship, which is kind of bad. It's not bad. It's just finicky, and it's something that this thing should be kind of built in and built with support. So I have half of these mechanisms working. What you're seeing right here is you see this reduce motion on and transition 0. Just before this call, I thought, hey, it'd be cool to add a little component that shows like debug information during development. So that's what I did. These are available only during development, and right now I've added them to animations, so you can kind of see them everywhere. So right now, let's see. If I turn off reduce motion, that means we enable motions. We can see that's off, right? So now these things animate. Yay, it's nice. Oh, it's so nice when they come back in, they'll plop and have a little spring, and that's kind of cool. But the tricky thing is, if I turn reduce motion on, these stay off. They only turn back on once something changes in the application. So like once I click that, bam, now it recognizes that it needs to turn on. So there's a disconnect in that relationship. And that's something that that's something I'm planning on, working on building in this particular session, if you're interested, or I can talk about other things. What are your thoughts so far?
I think it's pretty cool. I played around with your storybook demo.
Oh, yay.
Yesterday, and I was like, this is amazing. My mom has macular degeneration, and it causes seeing lines to be really difficult. So she needs really high contrast stuff.
Oh, yeah. So high contrast is helpful for her.
Very extremely. Like that, seeing that setting, I wish I could have sent it to my mom and had her play around with it, because this is something she struggles with online. So that's just really cool to see.
I feel bad for your mom, but I'm glad that I'm able to help in that way. Hopefully, eventually. Really cool. And colorblind thing, that was something I added more recently yesterday. Right now, the colors look weird because I have this colorblind thingy turned on. So I think if I were to turn this off, let me see. Reset it. Yeah. So like it's important because green, yellow, and red, those are usually used as like alerts, right? Oh, something is wrong. Your payment is successful, or whatever the case may be. However, if you are colorblind, let me turn this on, then you can't see it. So, and people don't read when it comes to things on the internet. I don't read. I go by strong signifiers like color or whatever, and because you can't rely on colors for people who have color blindness. So that means that if I turn this on, green has a certain pattern, yellow has a certain pattern, red
Oh,
has a certain
wow.
pattern. So that means that they can rely. They actually have signifiers when it comes to, you know, like a success state or an error state or something like that. So that was the idea of the patterns, and that came from Trello because that's what they've implemented into their tags. And
Super cool.
yeah, and the tricky thing about this, similar to reduce motion, is that usually accessibility features like this are sprinkled on after the fact. And what that means is maybe they only kind of work for alerts in a certain area. They don't apply everywhere. But this one, it's built in so that if you take a look at the code itself, it just says, please use this background color, use yellow, use red, use blue. And this is part of the styles. Like the style doesn't care about, as far as this is concerned, the style doesn't care about accessibility or whatever. It's the underlying system that takes care of it for the style. So anywhere I want to use green, I just use this particular function. Anywhere I want to use yellow, and that's how we get like accessibility stuff kind of built in, and it comes from the system level. There's a lot of these details that go in throughout the system. That's why you see all these little functions everywhere. Like here, get surface border color. That is the thing that like everything uses that particular surface border color, which is how you're able to get high contrast throughout, because it understands, oh, use this border color. And then high contrast mode basically changes the value of that color to something else. So instead of being transparent, it's now black. And if it's dark mode, instead of being black, it's now white. So yeah, it's building all that in from the system level. That's really important. It is not something that you can, at least I don't think, that should be sprinkled on after the fact. So yeah, now now we have to do motion things. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. So let me bring up my iPad again. I'm gonna sketch together. I'm gonna sketch my ideas, how it exists right now and why it's not working and how I can potentially fix it. How do I screen share? Come on. Screen mirror. Oh God, code 526. All right, cool. Alrighty, let's get rid of this layer. So here's the problem. So right now we have the switch, which is down there, right? Whoa, this is a giant thing. So we switch down here. That's like, oh, turn it on or off, on, off. Cool. And then arbitrarily, ... we have our alert right here. So if I interact with this, as far as the application is concerned, this one is totally unaware of it until something forces this to update again, right? So here in the example before, like once I toggle this on, we can see that none of these things have changed. The animation component doesn't know that reduced motion is turned on. That's because this and this are disconnected. There's nothing connecting it together. Usually, if you build an application and you have your toggle switch here and like your alert here, there is something containing both of them. Oh, sorry, thank you.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, there is something containing both of them, right? So usually this is known as like the parent component or the application component or the container or whatever. So that when this updates here, it lets this one know, oh, yeah, update this guy. And that's how that's able to happen. What I don't like about this particular setup is that it forces the application, the developer, or whatever, to wrap both of them with something. And that often leads to like more coupled, messier code, just because you're trying to force a relationship that should be inherently like it should work kind of behind the scenes kind of thing. So what really needs to happen is that there needs to be some sort of entity out here. Let me draw a little smiley face that understands how these two are binded together, so that if I change this guy is responsible for coordinating that change. that means that if you can imagine, there's different parts of your application. We have the button here, we have the alert here. They don't necessarily need to be contained, like there's no parent thing that needs to manage both of them together. The system knows how to do it by itself. So that's kind of what I'm building. So apologies for my iPad drawing being very messy. Was that helpful in illustrating my thought?
That was super helpful. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Great.
So there is something that exists right now in the library that does this. This was a little finicky earlier. Let's see if this works. Hang on, turn all this stuff off. These are modals. Oh, geez. I need a darker color. Yeah, great. So modals, these are kind of cool. So right now I have a single modal, right? But once I open up another one, you can see the one in front of it before went backwards. That's because these modals, they are aware of each other. This is an iOS inspired detail, but you will not see this kind of interaction with, at least from what I've seen, component libraries out there in the wild, just because it's not a detail that they built in. And there's no system that supports this. So similar to what I shared earlier here, that happy face, there is an underlying system that coordinates modals together, and those modals can live anywhere in the application. That is the exact same system I have to build for this motion thing. That way, any motion changes, things know how to coordinate. All right. How do I do this? I have absolutely no idea. I kind of have an idea. It's just, okay. I need to, okay. Theme provider. There is something here. So this guy is the one that is responsible for, it is responsible for motion changes. So let's, oh yeah, I have a debugger now. Import. Let me get my debugger component from, where did I get it from? Movie, G2, forget it, it's fine. I'll just write it inline here. Okay. And it is reduced motion. Yes. Yes. No. Yes, no. Yeah, that works great. I'm a developer. So I should see the yes. All right. So here, like this one, I don't know if you can see it right here in the bottom corner. Yes, no. That one responds directly. That's because when I mentioned earlier, there is something that wraps all of them together. So here, this one is aware because this container knows how to do it, is controlling it. That's how it's telling it, hey, update, yes, no. But this container is not the same as these ones. So I have to build that smiley face that binds this update to this guy. All right. So I guess well, let's try it. Import create store from that context. This context, that is the cross component awareness system thing that I was talking about. So I got to create some sort of entity. I'm just going to pull up the docs for this particular library because I don't know how to use it off the top of my head.
Does a lot of this relate to global styles in terms of, if you have to propagate a change?
In theory, the relationships of them, that's what it's similar in that regard. But like all the bits that I'm developing right here, they will make up the interface of Gutenberg, which is different than global styles. Global styles is changes the how the editor content looks. This one is editor interface.
Settings and stuff. Got it. Okay. It feels like a similar mechanism.
Oh yeah, it totally is. Like the cool thing is like once you like the relationships of like one entity or one something controlling the syncing of other bits. That's basically that's all you need to know when it comes to programming. That's all it is. Is that and like if else statements. And there you go. You're a developer.
Take your word for it.
Yeah. Trust me, it's fine. Okay, so let's call this guy something. Create a const. All right, let's call this happy face. Why not? Equals create store set. How on earth did I make this before? Modal, style, utils, modal, no, base, modal, context. Here, I made this before. Use base modal store. What on earth? Use base modal. Just copy this code here. Great. Great. I made that a long time ago, so I kind of forgot how I did it. Use happy face. Export. Oh, dang. Export const use happy face equals this. So now other things have are able to access it. Cool. Now I actually need to tell it to do something. Set state, get state, get state. How do I set your state? How do I tell you to have a certain state? What is this? Ah, okay. So is is reduced motion by default. Let me just say the default is false. And then there's some way to set it or something. Use store count increment. How do I make, oh, increase, okay. Set is reduced motion, next, set state. Set state, okay. Oh my goodness, set. What do I have to do? State. Next state. Oh, dang it, current state. This is what I'm doing right now is I'm basically, I think, narrating all the thoughts that go into my head as a program. There's lots of, pressing the delete key and dang it, because I typed the wrong things. But I guess it's the reality of it, right? It's not just like the ooh ah GIF demos of like, this is a cool thing I built. The process is a lot of dang it. Let's see, is reduced. Motion is next. Okay. Alrighty. I don't know. Let's just see what happens. Happy face is use happy face, and there is a use sure whatever. It's fine. Use layout effect. So now need to do something when something updates. That is the trick. Increase count is use store state count. This is so strange how this thing works. How does this work? I don't know. Current use effect. Ah, this is. This is one of those things where you like. This is a kind of a system kind of decision where I want to make this available to use within the library, not just that, but for people maybe external to the library. And what I'm experiencing right now is this confusion of like, I don't understand this API. It doesn't feel intuitive for me, which means that maybe as a enhancement, I can make that a little bit more intuitive so that I will have less of a terrible time working with it in here, but then also other people using it can have less of a terrible time as well. And I think it's important when you're working on libraries and stuff at this low level to be very aware of those things, because that has exponential impact, right? Because if people are having a terrible time reading your code, working with the code at this level, just say like within Gutenberg, if things are difficult to understand or work with, then that dissuades people from engaging and contributing, because barrier of entry is so high. And part of this experience is for me to recognize those things and reduce it as much as possible. So even here, this is a very real thing where I'm just trying to, how on earth do I do this stupid thing? Is me recognizing that something in here does not feel very intuitive. Okay, happy face. I need to use
It's like
something.
a weird empathy test right now.
Kinda, yeah. Oh, what on earth? State. Okay, fine. Whatever. State is reduced motion. Let me just, so right now I should see either yes, no on the bottom. Okay, no. Okay, great. If I change this to true, I should see a yes. Yes. Oh, okay, so that part works. It's basically like a hello world equivalent of like trying to get this thing to work. Okay. Increase is, okay. So set happy face is, I got it. I got you, library. I got you. Set is reduce motion. So now we have in programming, certain languages that have this kind of stuff built in, but you have setters and getters, right? Something that gets the information. So happy face would be the thing that gets the state, which is a true or falsy kind of thing. And then we have a setter, something that can update it. Something that reads, something that writes. And so now I want to, when this value changes, reduce motion, I need you to layout. I need you to update my happy face. Reduce motion. I need this value here. All right. So if in theory, oh, what happened? Reduce set happy. Fine, whatever. Oh, great. So now it's bounded. Cool. Right? We can see the yes, no changing, but these ones aren't changing. However, because I have my use happy face right here, and this entity you can see is completely separate from this guy. Now that it's separate, I can now use it to bind into my animation components, which are here, which you can see the reduce motion stuff is off. Now we need to connect them together. That is here. Yeah, it's here. And this comes from styles, and I believe it is, let me just see if I've imported it correctly. All right, styles, yes. Use happy face. I kind of want to keep it that name. Yeah, because like you recognizing accessibility things just to make people happy. So why not just call it use happy face? And yeah, I see something here. So it's available. It's great. And an animation, let me see. Const is happy face, is use happy face. Bloop. Use happy face. What do I have to do with it? I have to do something with it. Oh yeah, state is reduced motion state. Alrighty. So here, let me just check to see if this worked. They bounded. Yay!
You did it!
I did it. Yay! So is happy face is here. So is reduced motion is, so now recognizing if the system has set it or if it's being set by some other means or if it's happy face. So that is reduced motion. Okay. So that means that if I change this, the no and the yes are toggled. Great. Oh, so no transitions are happening now. But if I turn this off, we get animations. No, we don't. Why? This is frustrating. Why? Well, let's just see. I was so close. And I was so close.
I was cheering for you.
Thank you. So now I'm checking what are the properties that are being passed into my components, because this ultimately determines what do you call it? This determines the animations that it's going to use. So right now there's some stuff that's happening. It's using, oh, I'll blow this up. So this one's using an animation library that looks for certain properties like initial and exit. These are the ones that help give it that kind of like, when I remove it, it'll collapse. It'll do that kind of thing. So I'm looking for that. So in theory, if I turn reduce motion on, those things should now not exist, but they still exist. So that's a problem. And I think I know what the problem is. All right. Let me just see. Function. I'm going to call this one base animated. Function. So what I need is I need to create a little wrapper so that it'll update this guy as soon as the happy face thing has changed. So I don't know. I'm just making it up. Let's just see. Props and use happy face, blah, 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 here. Here, great. And now I'm going to do that. Return this with your props. And you pay attention to this, please. I don't know. Let's see if this works. Is happy face. And get rid of this. I'm just making things up. Let me see. So in theory, when happy face updates, these ones should also update now. And they do. So we can see transition is now 0 when I flipped off. That means that the properties have been updated. If I remove it, there's no animations. If I turn, no, wait. No. Turn this off. No animation. I give up. Okay. So the problem is it can't change back. Well, that's maybe another another time to solve this. But the most important thing is that at least, because I don't think people will be flipping this setting on and off in a realistic scenario. So at least the system is updated. You might. So I have to account for that case. But the system is set up right now where it understands how to read from your computer, your preferred settings, and also it can read from some sort of application or editor setting of some kind. To start, right? Like flipping it on and off may break it, but to start, it knows how to understand those two, and I think that's a great start for this thing. Gosh, I still don't know why it's not behaving. Let me just double check. Why are you not behaving? I don't like this. No, that's not what I want. I want final props. I was spitting out a bunch of stuff. Okay, so these ones should have exit animations and whatever. Get rid of that. Turn this on. These ones should theoretically have. Why does it still have it? That's so interesting. Hang on, I haven't given up yet. Okay, let's just see what it says. By default, I have it was false, now it is true. Because it's on. If I flip this off, it'll say false. If I flip this on, it'll say true. But for some reason, exit and other things like initial are still there. Why? Why is it still there? Base props. Let base props initial base if auto. Oh. Auto and not reduce motion. Maybe, I don't know. Let's just see. Flip off. That means I have them. If I flip it on, true, I do not have them, and it does not. So if I click, I'm just getting rid of this now. If I click, great. Now they can't be removed at all. How is this possible? I don't understand. Oh, wait a second. And I don't understand.
Is it somehow disabling the exit? I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah, it could be something with the library because maybe it's paying attention to, I think, transition. Okay, so now it's still off, but there is no transition. Huh. So I'm going to pull up my iPad again. The tricky thing with this iPad reflector. Nope, I gotta re-enable my iPad. iPad, come on. Whoop. Ah, all right, 7816. Okay, cool. So I suspect here's the reason why it's not working. Can you see iPad? Yay.
iPad's on.
Cool. So I have my, okay. That's a huge A. I need a smaller A. So I have my animation component right here, right? Underneath it, it's using a library, frame or motion. I'm going to draw that ultimately renders the thing that I want. And I've created this happy face system that exists outside of any application context, which is great because now that is being bound to that. Different color, pink. Yeah. So now there's this relationship. Cool. And this one is ultimately needs to pass those settings back down to here so that the library knows how to render. But I think here's the problem. It pays attention to a very specific, to reduce emotion, it pays attention to a very specific property. And I think that is transition, right? Oh, dang. Cut this. No, forget it. Forget it. even with this thing, I can make it. Okay. So oh, dang it. So we have transition, which is a very specific property that, oh, cool. So this one needs to pass this one down to here, right? Cool. However, when the happy face updates, this property also updates to reflect, oh, do I want transitions, yes or no? And again, it needs to be passed down to here. I think the problem, though, is this particular transition, after it is passed down the very first time, this one, the library is probably like, oh, for performance reasons, I am not going to update this anymore. The very first time you pass this down to me, this is the value I'm going to be using. So regardless of how many times this thing tries to pass it a new transition, maybe it does not work because it's holding on to this one. And this is a common thing within, I guess, front-end Reacty things is a process called memoization, and it's done for performance reasons. So that could be the case.
I was going to ask how this would impact performance because it seems like this potentially.
Oh yeah. Let me show you. So this is a very interesting thing. This reminds me of my previous company. I think a PHP engineer. She's very, very good. She asked me like, what is memoization? And I thought that was strange, but then I realized, well, in PHP, you don't. This is not a kind of a technique you use just because the type of development is different. So how does this impact performance? Let's say you have a function. Name a fruit.
Apple.
Apple, great. So you have an apple function, right? And this thing is responsible for telling you how its color based on a question you give it, right? So if you give it, so by asking Apple a certain question, it'll tell you what color it is. So now I'm answering red, right? So how memoization, so now we can imagine we have something that looks like this. Then output is color. And the color it tells you may be different depending on the question you ask it. Like, oh, what color are you, or when you're in the dark, or whatever it is. So now I have an incoming question, and then you have an outgoing answer. But if you ask it the exact same question 3 times in a row, it'll give you the exact same answer 3 times in a row. So for performance reasons, it'll store all the questions you ask it in memory, and also the answer that it gives you in memory. So that if you ask it the same question again, it won't recompute it. it'll just go, oh, you asked me this one, I'll just give you this answer directly.
Is it a cache of sorts?
Yeah,
like,
it's a cache.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what this. Yeah. So within React and a bunch of all these components for performance reasons, we have mechanisms like this to pay attention to certain things to avoid recomputation and whatnot.
So you almost need like a system to reset it after that cache has been created.
Yeah. So sometimes there are ways to like force reset or to force it to clear or to do something like that. And maybe the library is caching certain things so that it doesn't update like how I expect it to, which is, I mean, it's not great. We have to solve for that, but at least in the initial shot, it knows how to understand this, which is cool. So we're halfway there. Yeah. So that was fun.
That's super cool. Yeah, this is great. I learned a lot.
Oh, you did? Cool. I'm glad
I'm
able to help. And the interesting thing is like when people build applications or experiences or whatever it is, unless you have a component library layer, like what this is and what WordPress components is, most of the time people write glue code that binds together packages they find online. So it's like, oh, you want a date picker? Let me just install this date picker. And this date picker doesn't look like my application. So I have to write like 20,000 lines or 2,000 lines of glue code to kind of massage it to get it to work together. The benefit of having this like a very intentional component library layer is, yes, for some parts I am working with external libraries like that animation library. However, at this layer, I'm working with all the glue code. And so that means when the application or third-party block developers or whoever, they'll be using like my animation component, it'll be ready and working for them because it's designed to work for that use case, right? It's designed to work seamlessly within Gutenberg or WordPress or whatever. They don't have to write the glue code. The glue code lives here. And that's a very intentional bit of like component and API design to ensure that things work seamlessly. And there's lots of that scattered throughout this entire library. But these are things that I really geek out on. And I think some of the trouble, not trouble, but like something that I'm very aware of is that I'm going to switch off my screen share because I'm not really sharing anything anymore. So something I'm really aware of is like all these systems that I'm describing, if you look at it from a surface layer, they are inherently complex just because of, I mean, you showed me with me trying to do this happy face example, I describe, oh, you have to have this external entity and there's like synchronization stuff happening. So the concern I have is like, in order to get these features, like what I'm showing, to work seamlessly, those have to exist. So it makes, at least from the very beginning, if I'm just proposing those ideas, they feel very abstract. Like, why do we need all these systems? Why do we need 5 systems to do what seems to be a very simple thing? And that was actually my hesitation with this library going into it, because I understood that, like, there are many, many systems that play that enable this kind of experience. So I guess it's like, well, instead of me writing, I guess, a white paper on how, you know, my thesis of like how 10 systems can be combined to create a whatever, let me just build it so that people can see, I guess, the end result of it. And if they're curious, I can dive into the systems that make up the library. Like a big system that's usually underestimated is a system that compiles the CSS and the styles. And that is a main problem within Gutenberg right now, not just felt by me. I feel it all the time, but other people feel it too. And if you work with WordPress in any kind of capacity, that's something that you always fight against. And it's not just a WordPress thing. Like every company I've worked at and all of my coworkers from those companies or other companies, CSS and styles is always a problem. And the reason for that is it's a very flexible, simple thing that's been taken and used in a way that it was not designed for. HTML, CSS was not designed to do the things that we're doing with applications. They were meant to render like pages that you're supposed to print, right?
It feels very hacked together sometimes.
Oh yeah. Thankfully, it's evolved a lot since then, but we had to put a lot of, even with React and JavaScript and all that stuff right now, we have to put a lot of groundwork to make sure that we're able to that provides a platform with the ability to build things in a way that, say, iOS, you're able to build things within iOS very simply, because Apple has designed all of these bits, these components, these systems, and provides them to developers. That's why like an 11-year-old can just build an app very easily, right? It, like for me, building on the web or constructing experiences and user interfaces should feel that intuitive and simple. It's not right now for many reasons, but my goal always is to get it to that level. So, and that, what that means is that it's now accessible to more people, right?
And it's more fun a lot of the time.
It's a lot more fun because like
you're going beyond the basics.
Yeah, because it should be like, oh, I want to create this experience, and let me just throw a couple of things together, and then boom, you have it. It shouldn't be like, great, how do I fix the CSS so that it doesn't break when I do like all of those things are distractions to what you're actually trying to do. And this, I'm trying to eliminate as much of that as possible. Let me share my screen again. Cool. Let me know you can see. Yay. So one part of the system that it does out of the box is that it tries its best to lower the chances of the rendered styles conflicting with something else, because like that's usually where the problems are. Typically, if you were to check out any component library available, like made by a company like a Shopify Polaris or a third-party package like in the Material UI package, they have their own way of kind of compiling CSS, but it's usually only works if you start with like a from scratch project, because there's no styles there to fight with to begin with, right? You're starting from scratch. I'm only using this component library for its intended purposes. So there's no disadvantage there. But that's not the real world, right? The real world is, and especially in the case of WordPress Gutenberg, I need to use these components into a platform that was developed, 15 plus years ago, with that 15 plus year of like CSS and architecture and all that stuff. It has to fit in there seamlessly. And the style system that was part of this library had that in mind. And this was something that I experienced in my previous company, where it was like an 8-year application, PHP and all that, had existing system styles. How do we build a new next generation UI experience to integrate seamlessly with that? Again, it came down to styles. And the solution I had was the system needs to somehow boost its specificity in a seamless manner. So what I mean by that is, right now I have an alert component you can see right here. You can see that the style, the actual style that it's targeting, the CSS hyphen hash nonsense, that hash nonsense is important because the chances of that conflicting with your existing system is 0. So by that, like, you already have a huge advantage there. But if you check this out on the right-hand side, you notice that it's being repeated like 8 times. Every single time it compounds, it makes the style stronger. It makes it more specific. That means that if, for reasons, in your application, you're targeting all divs to do a certain something, well, because this one has its name compounded 8 times, the chances of this will almost always override whatever it is you're doing underneath. So this, like,
that's super cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But like in order for this to and the cool thing is, if I take a look at the actual CSS code by itself, like I'm just writing relatively normal CSS, minus these little JavaScript functions. Mm-hmm. But that aside, like I'm just writing relatively simple, straightforward CSS into this particular guy right here. I mean, this might not be the best example, just because styled is like a particular kind of way we have to do something. But there is a way you can just write like CSS equals sorry, CSS, and then you type your stuff in here, and the system knows how to compile it. And that compiling step, that's something custom to this system. Like I had to work with the CSS compiler in order to make this happen. And again, if I didn't build this and I wanted to introduce that concept in like a proposal kind of way, it's one of those things like I have to describe all of these pieces on what seems to be like an essay or white paper to kind of describe the usefulness of it, right? That was like a challenge. I actually experienced in the very beginning when I joined when I started working on Gutenberg, and there are bits of this system that live within Gutenberg as experimental today, which is good, and it's been helpful with components in that regard. But there's still parts of it that's missing. So it doesn't. The system that lives in Gutenberg, parts of it, they don't know how to do this compounding thing. Just because that was something I built into here. But yeah, styling system. It's a very, very interesting beast of a problem.
It seems complex, but very high impact.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like, and my goal is like for the average person contributing or working with this library, or the person consuming these components and using it, you should not have to worry about any of this stuff. The system will take care of this for you. You just focus on writing the styles and making your buttons look pretty. That's all you need to do. And the other really cool thing about this particular workflow is a challenge that often persists within most CSS setups is you have to tie a certain style with a certain class name. Like, hi Anne. That's a class name, and then I give that certain styles, and then that is then connected to a div or whatever it is you want, and that is how styles are bounded to HTML elements, and that's how they render. The connecting bit of that to that, it's kind of fragile, because the moment that this changes, this breaks. This connection is severed. And if there's something in the application or in your application or whatever it is that may target this for reasons, because CSS reasons, then also this breaks. And this is very arbitrary. These are arbitrary things. There is no like tightly bound relationship between this and this. And the cool thing about this system is when you're seeing something like this right here, this binds these styles directly to the div. So now I don't have to worry about a class. You're not writing class names at this point. All I'm focused on.
Wow.
Yeah, all I'm focused on, if you take a look at the actual quote HTML within the React, like I'm not using class names anywhere. What you're reading, and this is how it should be, is I'm using an animated thing. I have an alert thing, and here I have layout components that I'm forcing something to be a block with, and I'm using a close button. There is nothing in here polluting like the quote HTML. Like it's very easy to read, it's very easy to understand, and the styling system helps enable this workflow. Otherwise, you would see, if you take a look at the Gutenberg code, you'll see like 10 class names being combined together or whatever the case in order to style it. So this one, it makes that connecting bit between style to markup invisible. And yeah, that's also part of the styling system that enables this kind of workflow. And the other thing that's really important is, and this is usually where any kind of style setup breaks down, is what happens if I want to add styles to something to modify it for reasons, because there's always reasons. Oh, dang, hang on. Let me turn off my debugger because this is like nonsense right now. Okay, get rid of that. Come on, there we go. Great, now I see no everywhere. I'm going to have to fix this, but it's fine. If I take a look at here, yeah. Surface, themer, surface. Oh, here we go. So let's say let's pretend this didn't exist. Right. View is just basically a fancy way of rendering a div. So let's say I need to do a one-off change to this specific component here. If you're not using the system, what you'd have to do is, let's pretend we have a div, right? And then you have some sort of one-off style, one-off something. Let's hope you named it right. And then you style it with whatever it is, and then you bind it to here like that. Right. So now you have your little one-off adjustment. But this one-off adjustment, let's say there's something else that existed previously. This might not play well with this. That's problem number one. Problem number two is you've basically said, oh, this cannot change because I've already added this, and for reasons this has to live here. But only you know that. Someone else looking at the code 3 months later might not know that, unless you write your gigantic apologetic, comment block saying, please don't touch this because of reasons. Here's a link to all 5 GitHub issues. I mean, that's not a really great workflow, right? That's awful.
It requires a lot of digging and time.
And this is just one instance. And imagine over time how these one instances compound and things just get bad and then everyone's sad. So in order to eliminate this, let's build the system that knows how to take care of this by default. And that's what I've done. So inside of any one of these elements, it understands a CSS property. And here, I'm able to write whatever CSS I want. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's not valid code. And it binds this style to this element, and it binds that relationship for you. You don't have to come up with a random class name. It just knows how to do it. Inspect element.
And it's inline, so you can see it.
And it's quote inline.
Mm-hmm.
But what I mean by quote is usually inline styles look like this, right? I give it a style tag and I have background red or whatever the case may be. There is a problem with that. The problem is we run into situations where, I have my color thingy on. So now you have this, right? Background red here. The problem with that is if I do need to target this thing for reasons and change it to, say, background blue, it won't work just because inline styles are very, very, very specific. The only way that you can beat this is if you use important.
Which if you add those up, that's also...
If you add those up, then importance are now fighting with each other.
Everything's important.
Right, and that's bad. Everything's important, nothing's important. But the cool thing about this is, let me just take a look back here, is that if I take a look at this, where is this example? Where is it? Themer, and it does certain something. Where is it? I don't know where it is. Here we go. There is no inline style. It's against that hash thing, but it's being compiled together with other existing stuff. So now if you did need to override it for reasons, you don't need to use important anymore. And if you did need to write inline styles for reasons, then those two systems, inline styles versus compiled CSS, they don't conflict. So it opens up those opportunities for modification. And it does that in a very seamless and intelligent manner. And the other really cool thing is it understands how to take care of things like hover, which is impossible, literally impossible for you to write it with inline styles. Inline styles, it doesn't understand how to handle pseudo, like hover and active and all that. But this one, it does. It knows how to compile that. So now you get that. And this pretty simple detail is highly important to be able to control and maintain one-offs at a systematic level.
What is this called? Like, what is this? It's not inline, but what would you call this?
So this entire strategy of handling CSS is called CSS and JS. CSS and JavaScript.
Cool.
Yeah. This particular, let me compile arbitrary CSS and binding it to that the spirit of that is common within CSS and JS libraries. But this particular implementation is not so common. Like this was something custom I had to write. Certain libraries support this, and the engine that powers this whole system, Emotion, they support this kind of system here. So you're able to do something like this. But for them, for their setup, they have other like requirements before you're allowed to. So here you have to import a certain something so the system knows how to understand and blah, blah, blah. I made that part seamless. So you don't have to, there's no configuration required to do this. And that's how it should be, I think, anyway. Yeah, Styles. It's a wild ride. Thanks for asking your questions. And again, like, unless you're interested, then for sure you can poke around in the Styles package and now you can work with the compiler if you want to. But for most people, you don't have to care about it. You just have to be like, oh, I want to make this, make this view pink because pink is great. And man, and for me, I'm coming from a world of CSS. Like I love CSS, and the interesting thing is this strategy of using CSS within JavaScript in this manner. There's like quote conflict in the CSS community because they feel like, oh, JavaScript developers are taking that power away from us. Like this used to be our thing, but now they're messing with it, and now it looks horrible. I don't understand it, and now there's that kind of infighting, which is unfortunate. So, I mean, before I went into this whole CSS and JS journey, I was like that too. I was like, I don't like how JavaScript developers are handling this thing. But the moment I tried it, and the moment I got really into it, I kind of saw the light. Not necessarily in the code that they're writing, but what it enabled me to forget and to feel. Because the thing is, if you were to write CSS in a traditional manner, that being, it doesn't matter with Sass or whatever precompiled language you want, how the order of all your styles, what they're named and all that stuff, all this architecture stuff, these are philosophies and that you basically have to subscribe to and learn in order for you to participate. So in order for me to participate in this code base, in order for me to contribute, I have to learn this philosophy, I have to learn this architecture, I have to learn the nuances of them, what to do, what not to do, all of that overhead, right? Just so that if I make a change here, hopefully it won't explode somewhere else, which will probably happen anyway because of CSS reasons. But when you do CSS in this manner, where the systems like intelligently take care of that for you, as someone who has deep experience with CSS architecture, wrote several CSS frameworks, contributed to Bootstrap, I no longer have to worry about all that, and it feels great. It's amazing. Like I can just be like, I can just make this button pink, and it won't break anywhere, and no one will be sad, and the button will be pink, and it'll be great. Like that's really what I want to do. I don't want to have to read like 50 Medium blog posts, watch 30 talks in order for me to make CSS changes without, without being afraid of everything.
Hilariously, I just found a Medium article on CSS and JS that I have pulled up.
Yeah, I mean it's a newer and evolving thing, but what I find fascinating is like that workflow is become very much part of how people develop things nowadays. Like the new Facebook, they've reconstructed it using that system. They built their own system that's not released to the public, so we don't know what that's like. But they built their own kind of CSS and JS engine in order to help them build the new Facebook in that way. And a bunch of companies like GitHub has started to GitHub actually, GitHub is using it, but they acquired a company called Spectrum, and the person who founded and wrote and created Spectrum was a pioneer of CSS and JS. So they kind of inherited that through him. But GitHub is now owned by Microsoft, so now you have Microsoft kind of, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's growing in popularity just because it solves a bunch of the problems. And for me, I love it just because it alleviates overhead. Because at the end of the day, like I said, I just want to make the button pink. That's all I want to do.
I feel like you need a t-shirt. I just want the button.
That's the name of this show now. I just want to make the button pink. Thank you to my sponsors at Teespring. Use coupon code PINK for 10% off. What else do we want to get into? This has been fun.
I've learned a ton.
Oh, great.
I'm excited to dig into this CSS and JS. I'm curious if this ends up being incorporated into Gutenberg more, because it does seem like it'll help unblock a lot of people. Because it does seem like the barrier to entry is pretty high right now to kind of get into the weeds with all this.
Yeah, I hope so. And that same problem, which CSS and JS cannot fix, exists in global styles. And that's why global styles is a thing, because theme styles conflict with editor styles just because inherently there's no underlying system that allows them to communicate with each other, right? And what I drew earlier on my iPad, like you need something that serves as the underlying syncing between two entities. And if they don't, then all they do is fight. They just fight with each other, and then everyone's sad, and then people hate CSS or they hate WordPress or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see what theme authors would think of a lot of this system, especially with block-based themes.
Yeah.
Even though I know this is like more settings-based, but still, if you're thinking about global styles in that relationship.
From what I've seen, some folks, I think, I don't know, it exists. There's a big spectrum, right? Some folks really love it. Some folks are really excited. Some folks are unsure, and some folks are nervous. And I don't blame them, just because, similar to what I shared earlier, like the systems and all the work required to build those relationships from like a code level is inherently complex and abstract, because you need some sort of intelligent compiler thingy that knows how to synchronize settings and spit out styles in a non-conflicting way and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think that part was tricky, and that was something I was very aware of when I made the initial global styles proposal. And I guess similar to what to this component library I built, like in order for me to communicate those ideas, I had to build prototypes that kind of show, oh, these are the relationships. This is how something overrides this, and all that. Thankfully, the work is underway to create global styles. I've since stepped away from it for a little bit, but it's getting there, at least from like a foundational plumbing level, but there's still a long way to go.
It's super helpful to have these different demos to play with to help kind of connect the dots. I really like how you approach things that way.
Oh, thank you.
Because a lot of this is very abstract and conceptual. So whenever you can just like kind of play with something and see, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, like, and I don't know if it's because of who I am or just how I learn, but like, you know, like Bill Nye the Science Guy, he always has like he always has, you know, those very visual kind of demonstrations of how things work, and he explains it in a very simple way. Like, that's how I learn. So I try to
do a great job of that.
Thank you. I try to Bill Nye when I teach something, when I explain or when I teach something. But yeah, thanks for that feedback. I'll keep doing more of that.
Yeah, please.
It's also tricky though, because, you know, putting together some of these demos or some of these prototypes or whatever, it takes a lot of work to kind of put together, but it's worth it.
People can get stuck on weird details and lose sight of the bigger picture of what you're presenting to. That's what I found. If I create something.
Oh man, yeah. I know that feeling because before being super into coding stuff, I was a designer once upon a time. Technically, I still am, but details. And I know when I presented mock-ups or whatever at certain stages, right? Like it might not be 100% high fidelity, and I'm trying to present certain flows or certain ideas, and people get hung up. It's like, why is this thing like 2 pixels off? Like that's not the point. don't focus on that right now. So yeah, I know the feels.
I had someone tell me to create just a really bad mock-up so people don't get stuck in the details because there's too many
Right.
bad details that they have to stay high level. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's an interesting idea, and it kind
Oh
of
yeah.
works sometimes.
There's like dedicated companies to do that. Like Balsamic is the tool that people use.
The client
And
loves
the
it.
client loves the bad. That's like, yeah,
Oh,
it's a meme, like
The
this whole
worst
thing.
is when you show 3 mock-ups.
Yeah.
2 of them you're like, these are the bad ones, and then the one you is the good one, and then they do the Frankenstein. And they're like, how about you take this from this one and this from this one and here from here? Bad memories of another life.
Feel that.
Yeah. That's why I don't freelance anymore. I mean, more the power to people who can freelance and do that kind of thing. It's just not. I did it, and I recognize that it's not my strong suit.
I like volunteering now. That's my.
Yes, volunteering, because then you can like
fun.
participate, but then you're not technically on the hook because there's no exchange of monies.
Yeah, and they're just happy to get help. That's a lot of it, especially
Yeah.
with nonprofits. I tend to do a lot of stuff with nonprofits on the side.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping more people would show up, but that's totally fine. This is so fun today. I think I'll give
Thanks
more
for
of a
running it.
Yeah, I think I'll give more of a heads up next time. Again, like I only give like 45 minutes or whatever head up. Maybe I'll give like, on Friday I'm gonna do a thing.
I wonder if a 24-hour or like a couple day notice might help. And then we could ping people who might be interested in stuff that because there's always some area where we know other people are interested, and we all have that like mental list where it's like, oh, so and so would really like to be involved with this, but it's hard to organize people on the fly.
Yeah. I'm gonna try something. So to end this wonderful session today, I'm gonna draw something. What should I draw? Tell me what I should draw. This is a collaborative thing.
How challenging are we going for?
I don't know.
You should draw a new Gutenberg logo.
Oh my goodness.
Just for fun. Just what would you come up with if you had to do it from scratch?
Oh, well, I'm a very simple person. I'll just have a G.
G.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I'll just like in default font, just a G.
I can't think of anything else right now.
That's all right.
I had pasta for lunch. If you wanted to draw pasta.
Okay, cool. Pasta. Pasta.
Drums. Sean suggests drums.
Drums. Oh yeah.
General music.
Okay. Well, and I'm gonna do this without looking at anything. That's part of the challenge. How do I? Okay, drum. With different type of drums. I'll just draw a snare drum.
I also love what comes to mind for people with vague descriptions. Interpret the color yellow.
Hang on. I'm gonna try again, just because I need my line fixing. Yeah, here we go. Oops. And on the snare drums, there's like details that I don't know the names of. There's that.
Sean's judging.
There's that or something, and then yeah. And I always like to give my drawings happy faces.
Oh.
And then when you hit the drum, yay! It makes noises. And that makes them happy.
I also saw a bunny for a second.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. Well, what did I call it earlier?
The color pink?
The color pink or something. It should be
like
pink.
That.
Yeah, I just want a pink button. Thank you for tuning in to I Just Want It to Be Pink. I'm your host, Q. This is a drawing of a snare drum. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks, Q.
Sean. Catch you later. Bye.
Bye.